When I stepped out of my door to get the newspaper on the morning of September 12th, 2001, the first thing that struck me was the way the air smelled. It smelled like burning metal. Drifting slowly above my home, which is located about 34 miles from Lower Manhattan, was a huge grayish-brown plume of smoke. There was no doubt about its source. I opened my newspaper and began reading through it. When I came to page 7, I stopped cold. There in front of me was one of the most stunning news photographs I'd ever seen. The composition was perfect, parallel vertical lines in a man, a falling man, posed as if he were casually walking down the street on an otherwise beautiful day. The reality of the image was that he was upside down and falling to his death. The photograph was simultaneously peaceful and horrifying. In my mind, it's the most powerful news photograph I've seen to this very day. Yet despite the fact the image was printed in numerous newspapers on September 12th and is universally recognized for its strength and significance, it was later suppressed. Editors were called to apologize for publishing it, and for years the image was not seen. We're coming up on the 16th anniversary of 9/11. In front of us is the very newspaper I picked up from my front step all those years ago. Joining John Harris and myself today is the person who captured that page 7 photograph, Richard Drew. And the photograph that has since become known as the Falling Man is the topic of today's show. Before we go any further, we'd like to acknowledge that this is obviously a very important and sensitive topic, and we're holding this conversation with the utmost of respect for the victims, the survivors, and families, as well as first responders and journalists. We in this room are all New Yorkers, and we were present that horrible day. And while we will be discussing a photograph perhaps in detail, some will not appreciate, realize that the sadness, tragedy, and yes, the terror of this subject is never out of mind. Welcome, Richard. Thank you so much for joining us today.
Thank you for having me today.
Let's just give a little background here. You are an Associated Press staff photographer and a recipient of a 1993 Pulitzer Prize for feature photography. As a veteran photojournalist, you've been photographing news events at home and abroad for going on 50 years now, right?
Oh, well, that's for the AP. It's 48 at the AP.
48, but 48. Who's counting?
Yeah, exactly.
At age 21, an early assignment had you at the Ambassador Hotel in Los Angeles the night Robert Kennedy was assassinated. You've pretty much covered everything, from the mundane to the historic, from presidential campaigns to natural disasters. On September 11th, 2001, you were covering a maternity fashion show in New York when your editor called with reports of an explosion at the World Trade Center.
And I was talking with the CNN cameraman. We were waiting for the fashion show to start, and he was live that day. They were going to show it as the first day of Fashion Week. And he put his finger to his ear where his earphone was, and so he could hear the control room, and he said, Wait, there's been an airplane's at the World Trade Center. And just then my office called and the editor said, an airplane's at the World Trade Center, bag the fashion show, you have to go. And I said, okay. And so I grabbed my equipment. And at that time, Fashion Week was in Bryant Park, which is at 42nd Street and 6th Avenue here in New York. And I walked a block over to Times Square, and I took either a 2 or 3 express subway train down to Chambers Street, which is just north of the World Trade Center. And I walked up the stairs, and there I saw both towers were on fire.
So you were there after the second plane hit?
I didn't even know there was a second plane until I made my way across. As that day, the wind was blowing from west to east, and I didn't want to be having the smoke coming toward me. And so I slowly made my way, avoiding police and fire people, over to West Street, which is where the West Side Highway used to be. And I was making pictures because then I could see the towers, and I was told by the police that I should go over where the ambulances are. I didn't know there was a second plane until I was standing between a police officer and a woman EMT. And the police officer said, I was here when that second plane hit. And I said, second plane? He said, yeah, it was a big effing plane. It was like a 737, and it apparently was a 737.
I'm assuming you're shooting all along. Was your primary interest the fires in the buildings or the victims, or what was your thoughts at the point?
When I got there, also the firefighters they wear what are called Scott packs. They're like their air packs they wear on their back, and they breathers. And I remember hearing that when they run out of air, they make a beeping sound, beep beep beep. And I remember that a lot of them were lined up along the median strip on West Street, and they were going off beep, 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 and I was photographing the firemen who had already been in there trying to battle whatever fire there was, and all the first responders. And I was photographing the first responders because there were no victims being brought toward the ambulances, because there really weren't any really survivors. If you were a survivor, you got out and you walked out.
How did you divide your concentration? Because as we're talking, I'm thinking about how do you divide your attention, because there's so much happening over such a broad piece of territory in real estate, and it's developing as it's going on. It's not like it happened and this is now just going to simmer down.
Yeah, I could see both towers, and like I say, I was standing between the EMT and the New York City police officer, and he's the one who said, "Oh my gosh, look up!" And we looked up and we saw people coming down out of the building. And so I was concentrating on that as well as trying to capture the scene. You don't have a lot of time in a breaking news situation to have to compose what you're going to do. You have to react to it, and that's part of the skill set of a news photographer, being able to adapt at that.
How long after you'd been there did this moment happen where you looked up?
I don't know. I don't have any concept of time from that. I'm sure maybe Tom Janot's article in the Falling Man in Esquire, he might have cataloged that.
Well, they have the exact moment of that photo has been documented at 9:41:15 a.m.
Because the camera had a time code.
Right.
Yeah.
Right. Yeah. Incredible. Well, okay. So you took those photos and you went from there to look at other aspects of what was going on and photograph other aspects.
Here's the interesting part. Because I was near my office at that time was in Rockefeller Center, and Bryant Park is only 6 blocks away. I was going to go back to the office to transmit my fashion pictures. So I usually carry my laptop with me, but since it was so close, I was going to go right back to the office. But I didn't have my laptop, so I had to continue shooting and then somehow make my way all the way back from Lower Manhattan to Rockefeller Center before I could ever transmit my photos.
So you filled your card and decided to go back.
Actually, it's interesting. I actually took the card out of the camera from the fashion and put it in my pocket, and then I started with a fresh card, and I was back shooting with that.
Do you have a sense of how many photos you shot that day?
No, I have them all on a disc, but I've never counted them.
Who owns those pictures now?
The AP does.
They do?
Yes, sir.
Okay.
And after this series, the Falling Man sequence, what did you photograph? You were there for the building's collapse.
Right. Well,
Yeah, at what point do you say, I got to get back when something like that is happening?
Well, I photographed the first building collapsing. I heard the sound of it, of what I thought was like a rock slide or like an avalanche kind of thing, and I instinctively turned my camera toward the South Tower, and I photographed what I thought was like the facade of the building coming down, and it was actually the collapse of the first building. And some other EMT grabbed me and dragged me down the street and says, "We got to get the heck out of here." And he dragged me down the street and probably saved my life by doing that. And then I made my way back up to continue photographing whatever was going on. There were people walking out and with masks on with their hands on their face and handkerchiefs and things. And then the police started moving everybody out, and they were pushing everybody north to go out. And I didn't want to leave the scene. So there's a median strip in the North End Avenue, I believe it is, which I think is the most west street in Manhattan, just south of Stuyvesant High School. And there was like bushes, and I sort of hid in the bushes and let people walk by me, and the police walked by me and all that. Being foolish as I was, I'd seen one building collapse, right? So I didn't want to leave. Right. So, and I got up and I started to photograph the second tower was on fire, and I put on a short lens. I don't remember what the short zoom was. And I started photographing that, and just then the top of the North Tower exploded like a big mushroom. It just mushroomed out, and I have a whole sequence of the photos of the South Tower collapsing. And with
North
that,
Tower.
Sorry?
The North Tower.
The North Tower. Sorry, the North Tower collapsing. And after that, I decided it was time to maybe get out of there.
And was that a safety decision, or you figured?
I figured I had my stuff, right. and I had both towers collapsing, and so I went into Stuyvesant High School. There was the south entrance to Stuyvesant High School, and I went into the lobby, and the the building still had students in it. Pretty interesting. And I was looking at the back of my camera on the little screen at that time, a tiny screen, seeing what I had. And then I had to answer the call of nature. So I went into went in the men's room and I started splashing water in my face because I was all covered in that dust and all. And I was clearing my eyes. And then I don't know, a police officer, some member of the service came in and slammed the door and says, "We got to get the heck out of here. There's a gas leak in the basement." And I said, "Oh," and I grabbed my glasses, put them on, and I went outside the north side of the building and started walking up the West Side Highway.
And was there any moment in this time where you had kind of broken out of work mode and were kind of assessing or fearing or needing to call home? Or was there any, or is it just...
No, it's just it's instinct.
Yeah.
You just keep working and doing your job and capturing history.
Right. And was there, I'm sorry, was there, did you think of the various photos that you had shot, that there was something that was particularly interesting? I mean, did you realize, okay, this is the stuff I know I need to get back and show?
I didn't have time to review all of my photos on the back of my camera. I decided to keep doing my job. And when I get back to the office, I can then look at them on my computer and I can see what I've got and do the edit then. I didn't see the falling man photo until I got back to the office.
Right.
Did you catch it on the first zip through the images? Were you just going through and all of a sudden it caught you, or did you? This is the second take?
Exactly. I was sitting at a desk because an unoccupied desk at our office, because people were coming in with photos. They were done on film. We were still back in film days.
It was 50-50 film, because I was in photo care, and I remember that day people would come in buying memory cards and film.
Yeah. So people were coming in. I guess they found out where the AP was, and they were showing up, and we were processing their film, and we were scanning their pictures, scanning the negatives then to put it into our digital photo operation. And I opened up my laptop on an empty desk, and I started going through my pictures, and I called one of our photo editors over, who regrettably just passed away yesterday. And I said, "Mike, look at this." And he said, "Okay, that's it." And we both saw the symmetry of the picture, and but yet the quietness of it. It wasn't a building collapse. It wasn't a fire. There was nobody maimed. It was just
Zero gore.
Zero, nothing. It's not. If you look at the pictures that have been accepted, news pictures, I can take you back to Vietnam. Nick Utz's picture of the napalm girl running down the road.
Eddie Adams with the...
Eddie Adams, exactly. Picture of the shooting the Vietnamese in the head. The
And you
police
could
chief.
just stare at those, knowing it's so obvious what the horror is, what's going on there.
But
Your
see-
picture, people get blown away by it.
But those happened not on our soil. But yet John Philo's
yes.
picture from Kent State of the after the victim, the student was shot by the National
Guard,
Guards, National Guardsmen. That picture has been accepted, and these are 3 violent pictures, and they all show some agony and everything. But yet my picture is a very quiet photo. There's no blood, there's no guts, there's no gore, and he's not hitting the ground. And yet it's caused quite a controversy, and people are shied away from it. I think because they can identify with that photo. Because what would they do in that circumstance? I mean, if you have smoke, you can't breathe. In some of the other pictures I have from that day, I have pictures of people falling, and yet on the outside of the building, there's an image of a man holding on to the outside of the building. So who knows if that man holding on the outside of the building, if he ever got back in, or he was also one of the people who fell from the building. We still don't know if they refer to as jumpers. We don't know they were jumpers.
Well, that's another thing. The documentary Falling Man, I watched it way back when it came out, and we watched it again this week just to freshen up. And one of the things that kind of strikes me is that the coroner's office refuses to call them jumpers. They were forced out, they were blown out, but they will not say that these people had to make a conscious decision of how they were going to die. But
I'm going to jump back a little bit to when you were in the editing room. Was it an immediate, there was a no-brainer that this was the photo?
Absolutely. It's just the picture. It just was there. It had the symmetry.
It's a stunning photograph. Yeah. You know, on that same topic now, we have the newspaper. I have the New York Times right here. This is the paper I picked up that morning from my doorstep. Now, the cover of it is pretty darn dramatic. It's the South Tower after the second plane getting hit, and the ball of fire, and you can see black smoke against a gorgeous blue sky. Your picture's on page 7.
In black and white.
In black and okay, that's right. It was color up front. That's right.
That's right. I think it's in black and white. And it's also, I don't have a name credit on that picture either.
Well, we're going to straighten all that out.
Oh, no. Somebody very close to me already straightened that out with the New York Times.
It is in color.
It is in color.
It is in color.
Take it back. Sorry.
But it was pushed, again, page 7, and you recognize it as being a very dramatic photo. Were they already feeling it in their gut that this might be too much, and that's why they buried it back here?
Maybe they thought so, but the Allentown Call, the morning call, put it on their whole back page.
Yes.
And the Staten Island Advance also. I just hosted a group of African exchange students at the AP, and the editor, Claire Reagan, she actually brought a copy of the Staten Island Advance showing me that it was on their back page also.
I mean, I know from the movie that we were referring to that editors everywhere were already having a problem trying to decide whether they should run this photo. I mean, I think there was immediate recognition. Was that something that the editor at the AP spoke about at all?
I think at that time we put on the caption, there was like a lead line that said graphic content or something like that at the beginning of it. And it's really up to the newspaper or website or magazine, whoever wants to use the picture.
The AP puts it out. They don't have that same responsibility in that sense.
It's not a responsibility. It's part of the. We don't censor our photographs. It's up to the individual paper, like the Allentown Call. They got a ton of letters saying, I don't want to. My family should not be seeing this. In their morning eating while they're having their cornflakes, I guess.
Right. Yeah, that was what was said at the time.
How long did this ban stay in effect? Because
I don't think it's a ban. I think it was a choice by the newspaper, whatever media was going to use it. I think it was the choice of them. There was no ban. People are saying there was this picture was banned.
A heavy word. The choice not to publish this.
Yeah.
Now,
I've heard it. Well, it was censored, or this. No, it wasn't censored. It was the AP still has it in the archive. It's out there. Anybody can see it at apimages.com. You can go look at every photo that the AP moved on September 11th and 12th and 13th and whatever, and all the stuff's there.
The photograph is accessible now. Has it appeared in print since? I mean, has that stigma gone away?
I know
you go on the internet; it's all over the place.
It's appeared in print. The Los Angeles Times ran it. They ran it on their op-ed page several years after September 11th.
Okay.
I've had on various anniversaries of September 11th. I've done interviews, TV and radio interviews. And they've actually taken me down to Ground Zero to talk about it, and it's not. And I've been on Fox News about it. It's like there was it's just out there, and it's a picture, and you can choose to look at it or not, but you can't negate the fact that people did fall out of the building.
Were you aware, though? And I kind of want to hold on to this to the second half, but we're here now. Were you aware in the immediate weeks and months and even a couple of years afterwards that this was happening? There was this kind of self-censorship. Was that something that you were aware of or thinking about, or was it just past? I mean, it was past for you.
I guess I never thought about the censorship issue or however people want to say that. It was, I like to say it's a choice. And it's something that happened, and people either want to use the picture or they don't want to use the picture. It's like anything, illustrative story to illustrate any story.
Can we talk a bit about the idea, something that you've mentioned before about the continuous motor drive aspect? I don't know how else to start this, but the fact that you weren't aware of what you had taken at that time.
There was no decisive moment. It was essentially run and gun, essentially.
And but you were aware that there was a sequence. You'd seen all the images.
I know there was I like to say that I didn't personally push the button at the time that the gentleman was in that position. That's a series of photographs. I think one of 9 pictures of him falling. Right. And the camera cycled at that moment. He could have been an inch one way or an inch the other way, and it wouldn't have been the exact sort of bisecting of the towers at the time. And so just by dumb luck, it happened.
It's also worth mentioning that in that same series, this is the only frame in which you have this serenity to it. The rest of them, there's conflict and there's chaos. This is somebody falling to their death. And like you said, the camera happened to catch one split moment when everything was in equanimity. It was just calm.
He's never been positively identified either.
Right.
He was originally identified by the reporter from the Toronto Globe and Mail, who was tasked by his editor with this picture, an enlarged version of it, to walk around and look at these posters that were put up all over the city with photographs of people who were missing. And so he went to Times Square and saw a picture of that he thought was this falling man, and he wrote a story about it, that it was...
was one of the from the Windows in the World, one of the workers from up there.
Yeah, it's interesting that about 6 months earlier, I photographed the chef from the Windows in the World. We did a story about him and all that, and and then 6 months later or so, here I am photographing the fall of the building.
Well, the movie does a really good job of detailing that search for this person and the reporter from Toronto's attempt. And then Tom Junod's later attempt.
Yeah, originally identified as a kitchen worker there, and it was allegedly his last day on the job. He had got a job at another restaurant somewhere in Midtown, I think.
No. It's very interesting how one family reacted to the possibility that this might be their relative, and then also how this family reacted. And
to absolutely refuse to believe that my father, my husband, would jump.
Well, because it was a sin.
Yes.
For him to
I get
commit
that.
suicide. Yeah, suicide, yes.
But then
and also, they said he didn't have an orange T-shirt on, which you could see in some of the other images from that sequence. He was wearing a chef's toque, which is the sort of white jacket.
Yeah,
and the jacket blew up, and the falling man has this orange T-shirt on. He said he didn't own an orange T-shirt.
What's your relationship with the photo now, or do you, or even in the years since, do you look at it? I mean, you said that you went back at a certain point and tried to do some of your own investigation, or is it something that, in a sense, you want to put behind you, or you want to just...
It really amazes me that people still want to talk about it.
Yeah.
And it used to be on like the 5th anniversary or the 10th anniversary or the 15th anniversary. People want to talk about these things. Actually, after the first couple, 3 years after 9/11, I was doing a lot of interviews. And I haven't done one in a long time, except for now.
Any thoughts that have come to you, or feelings with this distance that you might not have had in the first couple of years?
Well, I think the photo really speaks for itself.
Yeah.
I can sit here and talk about it all day and what possibly happened and what did happen and whether it should be censored or wasn't censored. The picture's been used, here and there over time. And if it has legs, then the people want to see it, then they can find it. It's like you say, it's out there on the internet. It's everywhere.
Oh yeah. Yeah.
How do you? Speaking of that, when
it's also in the September 11th museum.
Yes,
it's in, and they have an alcove in the museum that it's with a little sign, a warning about pictures of people falling from the building, and you go in there go around a little corner, and they have it projected along with other photos of people falling from the building, and they have it projected so you have to look up at it. So it gives you a feeling like you're looking up at the building,
same perspective.
Same perspective. So you're looking up at the building and in this darkened little alcove to look at it.
That's interesting. And one of the things I really appreciated from Tom Junod's article and the film also, and him speaking, was that these folks, these people, they need to be given the hallowed ground too, that other victims and heroes, what you want to call them, were given, and in some cases these people weren't, because no one wanted to talk about it, no one wanted to look at it, no one wanted to think about the fact of how horrible their decision was. So we put it aside, and he felt that it was his responsibility to kind of give these people the respect and the honor that they also deserved.
Okay. We're going to take a short break, and we come back. We're going to talk more about Falling Man with Richard Drew. Rich, I'd like to ask you, how do you recognize a good photo in a tragic moment? Is it the same qualities for any photo? How do you hit these things?
There were a lot of pictures, and I can only speak for my take on September 11th. There were a lot of pictures of mine that day that could have told that story without Falling Man. But that photo stands out because of its symmetry, its composition. It was actually a horizontal photograph, but it's been cropped vertical because, yeah, it's an original horizontal image. Matter of fact, in the September 11th Museum, they originally had it as a horizontal. And I was there a couple of days before it opened, and with then President Obama, and I went into the seat in the alcove, and I saw that it was a horizontal, and I talked to the people, and they've since changed it to a vertical picture.
Interesting.
Vertical
okay.
crop, yeah.
It's definitely more powerful as a vertical. No two ways about that. All right. Yeah.
But again, I guess to follow up a bit, the idea that the photographically it was it spoke to you immediately. I mean, because you were looking at the sequences. So here, what about that and this image? I mean,
it's called the editing process.
Yeah.
You know, you can go through a whole take of your vacation pictures, and then there will be that sunset or that wave crashing over your son or daughter, and they're freaking out, whatever it happens to be, and you'll see, oh, that's the picture. And that's what I have to do every day. I can be, like I said, on the floor of the stock exchange, and it depends on whether some man's hand is up or down or their facial expression.
Yeah, I mean, I think the body position of the falling man in this frame is what distinguishes it from everything else. I mean, there's just something that...
Well, that's just part of it, though, because it's also the background, because if there was a chaotic background there, it would just be, I think, another falling person photograph. But those vertical lines, they change the context of everything.
One other picture that's very large in the museum, in the 9/11 museum, is another picture I shot during originally the collapse of the first building. It shows a lot of the debris coming down, and a couple weeks later, someone from the Time Life Photo Lab called over to the Associated Press and wanted to speak to me, and I said, well, what's going on? He says, oh, do you know there's a person holding on to a hunk of debris in one of those pictures? And I said, what? He said, yeah, take a look at this frame number, so-and-so. And the picture's hanging in the museum. I don't know whether they know it or not, but if you turn your head like this to the side and lean over to the right, you can see a person wearing a white shirt holding onto a piece of debris as it's coming down. So it's inside that hole coming down. So
we spoke about this a bit earlier, but in the days after, were you aware of the outcry or I guess the backlash you would call it about this photo?
At what point did you start hearing kickback about this?
You know,
pushback?
I don't remember if there was really at that time, this big outcry. I didn't get that. I don't remember any of that. That I was going to be, it's going to be this. People were saying, "Oh gosh, look at this picture," and a lot of papers used it, including the New York Times. A lot of people didn't use it because, again, of content.
Did you take offense of that? Did that outrage you in any way, or did you kind of get it?
I guess it's up to community standard. It's up to whether the newspaper thought it was something that their readers wanted to see at the time.
Yeah, but for yourself, though, I mean, as a photographer or as an individual, just what was your personal take on it?
But your picture can't be everywhere all the time.
Oh, no,
your pictures can't be. But that picture was of a certain type. We didn't see there was a lot of, there were no other pictures like that. We saw people, we saw pictures of the building coming down. We saw pictures of the explosions. We saw people.
Yeah, well, the first
grieving.
6 pages of the Times here is everything from that day.
Reactions and all. Yeah, exactly. We saw a lot of that, but we didn't see that. We didn't see people dying. There were no pictures of people laying on the ground who had fallen from the building.
No. Nothing that I'd ever seen. No.
In reading, editors from around the world were saying, why are these images not being seen? Suggesting that they were being suppressed. But I think the fact is that these photos just could not exist because people were not close enough. Then the buildings collapsed. And frankly, victims were disintegrated. I mean, there's
actually video. There's a Reuters photographer who since retired. I've seen his video of people falling from the building. Coming down from the building.
Oh,
so
yeah.
There's a lot of that.
Yeah.
But it's amazing how fast they fall.
Yeah.
I don't know if you've ever seen it in real time.
Yeah.
But
and there was phrases that have been used a lot about this image and the stillness and the grace and even freedom is words that are brought up in terms of this last minute decision. You'd seen the sequence. You knew that this was kind of an anomaly compared to the rest of them. Were those phrases that rung true to you, or did you have kind of issue to say, well, wait a second, this is just one frame, almost, by chance caught this way. So when you saw those phrases and those words being described, or the image being described that way, how did you think?
It's up to interpretation.
Yeah.
Individual interpretation, whether you think it's just a nice, it's a beautiful picture for its symmetry and all, but then you have to look at it and think, wow, this was a tragedy. This was one part of a tragedy. And this is probably one of the only human elements besides the picture of Father Judge being carried out.
Right.
Oh, yeah.
That really shows the human element of this tragedy.
Mm-hmm.
We see a lot of people reacting, looking up. We see people, firefighters and responders and all that. And it just happens that this picture caught the human element of that day.
And kind of piggybacking on Alan's question, as a journalist, did you feel that this is the type of thing that needs to be seen? So when you heard that, or maybe you didn't hear, but when you found out that people were retracting the image or not continuing to publish it, did it bother you at all as a journalist? As a
journalist, I think that it has to be seen. It's part of history. You can't hide history. Look at a book, and the history's still going to be there. My picture is in books too. It's been recently in a book by Time Magazine, the 100 Most Influential Photographs, and I'm very humbled by that.
In later years, as we went into several wars and imaging became an issue. I mean, there was strict kind of Department of Defense protocols as to what could be seen, and you mentioned earlier, comparing it to the Vietnam era when, caskets coming home were not to be displayed,
but
dead soldiers were not to be displayed.
But we are seeing pictures of caskets coming back.
Yeah. Well, I mean, again, I think everything, and we're seeing your image. It doesn't. All you need to do is click on the website. So I mean, this is kind of pre the explosion of media and imagery on the internet. But do you think about that in terms of kind of a larger censorship or self-censorship that's going on now in terms of images that people don't want to see?
Right now, I don't think there is any censorship anymore. You can see pictures of anything online. Everything is fair game.
Mm-hmm. And certainly,
now you say online, though, but what about in print, like say the New York Times? How do you think the Times or any of the major news outlets would handle your photograph today? Because we're in a different mindset right now. So many more things are acceptable. Do you think that picture would A, be as controversial, and B, be as hushed down after so soon?
I think it would still be controversial. I don't think it would be hushed down. I think it would get people talking. It would be more of a talking point than it would be a censorship point.
I would agree with that.
I mean, censorship by whatever media would happen.
Yeah.
Have it in print. Yeah, I think it would become more of a topic for discussion. It would get wider use now because everyone can pick up their phone. I mean, I walk down the street and I tell people, look up. I yell at them. I'm a crotchety old man. I said, look up.
You too?
Just on my way over here today, I yelled at somebody on 34th Street.
There was a quote that I read about the image and maybe in one way to look at why people retreated from the image, because it feels like you're looking at a private moment. There's this sense that
I've invaded someone's space.
Well, yeah, or we as the viewer are invading someone's space, someone's private ultimate decision. I think there's some legitimacy to that.
But we don't know that, do we?
No, we don't. No. I mean,
we don't know if it was his decision or it was.
Yeah.
I mean,
who knows?
look, the truth of the matter is, what's the difference between photographing falling men and photographing a homeless person sitting on the street?
It's interesting. We don't use many pictures of homeless people because you can't identify them as homeless. We don't know that. Do you know he's homeless? Because he's sitting on the street?
Did you know that falling man jumped?
No, I don't.
Mm-hmm.
That's right. But he's falling.
He's falling, and the other person is living on the street, at least at the moment.
Well,
maybe not. Okay.
This is a big open discussion here.
Okay, yes.
Well, I think that many people have talked, and certainly Junod in his article, is that leaving the person unknown is more important than finding out who the person is.
I agree 100%. I really do.
And then it's become this symbol for everybody that's been lost.
It becomes a shared experience because, we all own it to a certain extent.
You know, those people who were falling from the building, I couldn't see them when they hit the ground. They were falling out of my view.
Right.
Out of my view. I was standing where the Goldman Sachs building is now, at West and Vesey Street, and there was obstructions and all, but I could hear them.
You could hear them. Yeah,
I could hear them.
You'd said that regarding the photo of Bobby Kennedy and others that people were not asked to look away in earlier eras of photography, and now, or at least post 9/11 and the era that we're in now, we're doing that, or we're being asked or told to look away. Is that something that you would, to confront the reality of the situation, and maybe there's something that's going on here that's bigger than just this image, where we're being asked to ignore the realities of what we're involved with as a nation and as a people. Do you find that to be the case at all?
I don't think we're ignoring any of the hardship that's going on now in Houston. We see people being carried out, people being helped out. I was watching, when I was in New Orleans just this last weekend, I was watching on CNN a live TV of people being rescued from homes. It's this like 80-year-old man being pulled into this boat, and this is all harsh reality. This is happening. We don't want. Would you turn away from that? No. Do you think there's a certain curiosity that people have that they just sort of, you can't take your eyes off of something? It's really. We're in a different era now. We're in a 24/7 news cycle. There is no afternoon and morning newspaper where I used to work. You only saw your news twice a day, and at the 6 o'clock news, or maybe even that later at the 11 o'clock news at that time. How about all the people with their mobile phones, and they're photographing people getting shot in the back as they're running away by the police at some incident I can remember, or someone. How about we see these the police cameras. There's so much immediacy right now. Everything is immediate, and there's, like you said before, there's censorship, but there's really not. It's more and more things are acceptable. I don't think it would be. I think more people would have used the Falling Man picture today than did in 2001.
That's my hunch also. And by having these images, that's what lets us know what's right or wrong, and helps a lot of people make some moral decisions when you see certain things that may not be pleasant.
You mentioned with Houston right now and people being rescued, and the idea that this gets me back to the thought that many of the images we saw after 9/11 were either what I would describe as spectacle, the explosions and the tumbling of the buildings, or the heroes. I mean, that kind of became the set of images that we are most familiar with now. Firefighters, or the raising of the flag, which is kind of repeating images, repeating ideas that Americans anyway are very familiar with. And obviously I think that's how we deal with things. That's how you make good out of bad, good out of horrible. But is it fair to say that also kind of keeps us from looking at the reality of these choices that people had to make and the horrors? And do we really want to see those? I mean, I guess my point is that your image being pushed to the side in those weeks after indicated that we didn't want to talk about this stuff.
Well, it wasn't pushed to the side of the weeks after. It was really sort of pushed aside the day after. People move on, and that picture appeared on September 11th, and it was in print September 12th, and it's been used in a couple other papers. I know I got a copy of paper from Japan that's the size of the New York Times. They used it as the whole back page of the newspaper. Right. It wasn't like they were gonna, not going to use it. But it's not a picture that you need to. Unless we're going to talk about Falling Man, that needs to be in print all the time or be out there. You can go seek it out, but unless there's some relevance in whatever topic they're going to write about, I don't see a reason why Falling Man is being suppressed in any way. It just isn't topical. We're, like you said at the beginning, we're up to year 16 now.
Yeah.
You could say, I guess, about any photograph that will appear in any newspaper today. I mean, some of them might make frequent guest appearances, and some of them may not ever be seen again because there was no reason to bring them back.
Going back to Staten Island, about the African-American man who who died after being put in a chokehold.
Yeah.
And that keeps popping up every once in a while in the newspaper. That was actually still framed from a citizen journalist video.
Right.
Yeah.
Because that's still part of the public conversation right now. It's
Absolutely.
part of the dialogue that's going on. The issue is not gone over. We're not cleaning up and putting up a new building in its place. It's still an issue.
You'd said at one point that, and this is going back, that in 10 years we'll be able to look at this photo as part of a whole of that day, as what really happened. So as you said, we're 16 years out, and you feel that we're at that stage, right? The photo is part of the story.
It is part of the story because, as I said before, it's part of the human element of that story. We don't see many human elements, like you said, heroes. For a year afterwards, the AP rented an apartment where we could look into Ground Zero and the cleanup, and I had to man that during some of my 8-hour shifts during that year's time.
Really?
And I sit in there, and every once in a while there'd be a group of firefighters would come out with a flag-draped stretcher, and that was one member of the service, either a police or a fireman that they found in the rubble, and when we used those pictures too.
So I'm sorry. For how long were you covering this event, 9/11 and the cleanup and the follow up? Was this something that was a year of coverage, or almost?
Even after that,
Yeah.
sure, of course, and even the anniversary every year.
Yeah. So it's something you.
I was thinking about this morning before I came here, because September 11th is coming up real soon, about what kind of ceremony they're going to have this year. It keeps getting less and less. They read the names, they ring the bell when the two buildings fell, and when the planes hit and when the buildings fell. But I don't know what. I was just thinking in my mind today, what's going to happen on September 11th again.
Actually, I was thinking this may be the first year I go down. I've never gone to those ceremonies, and I think
I'm going to tell you a secret. I have never been to one of those ceremonies. My editor, who was working for a competitive news service at the time, he always had me sitting on the desk editing the pool photos.
in terms of day-to-day coverage, how long did it extend? Do you recall after?
No, I don't remember. I know it was a long time, though. Yeah, for at least that first year, because we had to cover things on the ground as well as, like I said, from this apartment where we could look into the thing, and we manned it 24 hours a day.
Just related, we're talking about invasion of privacy and, how this information is shared. And we're talking about a photograph that a lot of people took very personally and internalized. One of the things that I rediscovered when looking for this 9/11 newspaper, which I knew I had somewhere in the house.
I have one somewhere too, but I don't know where it is either.
I saved several newspapers over the course of that year that struck me as interesting. And going back, the following Sunday in the New York Times Week in Review, there was an article about last conversations on phones. And they were quoting between people in the planes that went down. And some people were able to get cell service from the planes when they knew it was happening, and definitely from the towers, both towers, people who were trapped and making last calls to loved ones and things like that and reaching out. And they were quoting from many people, giving names and really giving real personal, this is as personal as it gets. May 26th, the same year, a cover story in the New York Times, again going back to last words. Giving names, giving words, giving dialogue that was private conversations between husbands and wives, parents and children, loved ones. That we're okay on. But a lot of people had for the same reasons that we want to hear what people are saying, we can't look at this picture because we're, quote unquote, invading a private space.
I was on that point. I was able to help someone get closure for their fiance who died during the September 11th attacks at the World Trade Center. I don't remember what the time frame was, how many years later. It had to be, 5 or 6 years, maybe more. Someone called me and said, a gentleman from New Jersey, he said, I think you might have photographed my fiance falling from the World Trade Center. I said, well, if you'd like to come over here, and I'll let you look through the take, the photographs, and we can sit together. And we actually did a story about this too. About the AP did a story about this gentleman coming to see, and we went through the pictures of the people falling from the World Trade Center. And he said, "Oh yeah, here she is," because he remembered she had on her tan pants that day, and whatever color, I forget the color of the blouse she was wearing. or the shirt. And he said, yes, that's her. So he was able to get closure on this person. So I think I was able to help him, even though I might have invaded his privacy by having a picture of this woman falling, her privacy. But I was able to help him get closure on this too. So there was a good and a bad part of this, if you want to look at both sides of that.
Well, I think that one takeaway and is that people who are really involved, I think they want to know. They may not want to see graphic, horrible images, but they need to know as much as they can in order to find some peace.
People say, how can you see this and not be affected by it? They ask me these questions every once in a while, but especially about September 11th. And I'm a father of 4, and I was in the Dominican Republic covering an assignment, the Caribbean baseball series. And I got a call at like 2 a.m. from one of our editors in New York saying that an airplane full of German tourists had crashed in the Caribbean on the other side of the island. So myself and a reporter hired a driver, and we drove to the other side of the island. And I was standing on the dock where they were bringing the bodies back. And this is not the Coast Guard, but in private boats. And they were laid out, the bodies were laid out on the decks of these boats. And I had to take a break from that. I just went around behind this little truck, and I sort of stood there a minute and composed myself and went back. My wife said that the camera's a filter for me, a filter for what I see.
I think it has to be. Yeah.
Well, camera is a filter. I mean, just a lot more trivial. We recently had an eclipse, and some of the biggest experts out there said, don't look through a picture, experience it. Don't look through your camera. Be there. And that's part of the same thing. So, yeah, a camera is a filter, no two ways about it.
On that point, on September 11th, one of our senior photographers at the time, he didn't go downtown. He made the famous picture that he went to the top of Rockefeller Center, and to the top of the rock, and he photographed the Empire State Building in the foreground.
Yes.
And he also went over in front of St. Patrick's Cathedral and made another telling picture of this Asian woman reacting, watching, and she could see it from Fifth Avenue, what was going on. And he was from New Jersey, and he couldn't get home on that night, so he came to stay at our apartment. I live on the Upper West Side. And my wife had made us dinner, and we were sitting there, and she says that we talked about everything except what we did that day.
Mm. Yeah, I'm sure. I can imagine. The reaction shots are some of the ones that always get me the most emotional when I see the faces of the people who are reacting to what they're seeing. Certainly in video, but still images as well. There's some of the. I'm not sure why that. You're kind of mirroring their reactions and feeling it a lot deeper than, for example, seeing an exploding building or whatnot. Maybe as at least my last question, Alan, I don't know if you have any, and it's something I want to get back to. You had spoken about the fact or the idea that it's very difficult. This photo became difficult for people because they identified with this person.
Yes.
What is there anything else that you can maybe expand on this idea why this photo may have been so hard for people? I mean, I agree with that, and I think we just go down that line and we ask ourselves the same questions that this person might have been asking themselves, or what they were experiencing and the choices that they had to make, and I think that speaks to it. This identification problem.
I think you've just hit the nail on the head. I can't think of any other reason why people would shy away from this photograph, except that it's very personal for them, or maybe they have feelings for that person who was in that photograph, that they were thinking, wow, look at this what happened to this person, and I'm home safe.
I know one of my own personal experience. I was working on West 21st Street at the time, and when we heard that something had happened, we took turns walking to the corner and looking down 6th Avenue, and it kept striking me that people who were just milling around, watching, and just over a mile away, clear shot, is hell. You see 2 buildings in flames, and you see smoke pouring into the heavens, yet where we were, it was quiet, blue skies, and, just there was an awareness that was going on, increasing awareness that was going on, more and more people showing the streets, but
I was surprised because I was walking back. There's the only way to get. They had shut down subways and buses and everything.
Yeah.
I was walking back I walked over by then St. Vincent Hospital, and they had all the doctors and nurses waiting outside for victims to show up, and there were no victims.
No one showed up.
And so I made my way over, and I tried to make a phone call to my office, and I was able to call them. I found a messenger service that still had phone service. I had a landline. And I called him. I said, "I'm okay. I'm on my way back." And I had to walk back up 6th Avenue to the office. And I was wearing all black at the time, and of course I was covered with this dust. And somebody turned to me on the street and said, "Wow, where have you been?" But people were listening. People were gathered around cars that were parked and listening to the car radios about what was going on. And so it was really sort of that. There's another dichotomy. People were going, "Oh, like where have you been?" That I would be all covered in this dust.
Yeah.
It was really, it's really sad.
Richard, this has been a really, really wonderful podcast episode.
Thank you.
Any parting thoughts about photography, journalism that you'd like to share?
One of my editors many years ago said the best thing you can do in this job is your homework. And if I go on a job, if I get assigned to go photograph some politician or whatever it happens to be, I have to know who this guy is, whether it may be some celebrity, if it's not in my purview. So I read the New York Times first thing in the morning at 5:30 when I get up. On my way to work, I buy the New York Daily News from the cigar store around the corner. And that's my morning reading while I'm on the train, either I'm going to the stock exchange or not. And on the way home, I'll buy the New York Post because I like to read the gossips and all that, and so I can keep up with that part of it. So I have to know my job. I'm doing my homework.
Thank you. Another fine show here done. Little plug, selfish plug for ourselves here. If you are not already a subscriber to our show, go to iTunes, the B&H Photography Podcast. It's free. We have, going on 90 episodes posted free. You could download them anytime. Tons of wonderful information. I go back to a lot of the shows, and I'm often amazed. I don't remember talking about half the things we even discussed in some of the shows, so I'm always relearning things. In addition to the conversation on Falling Man, we actually spoke about a lot of other aspects of Richard's career. He was at the assassination of Robert Kennedy as a young photographer. He was 21, and he has a Pulitzer Prize to his name. And we spent a lot of time discussing those aspects of his life. The show went a little bit too long to include it here, but we decided it's also too good to let go. So as a little treat, next week we're going to be having a short bonus session with Richard Drew talking about the earlier parts of his career. And again, we're going to be releasing this mini episode sometime next week. On behalf of John and Jason and myself and our guest today, Richard Drew, thank you so much for joining us today.